Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a quiet farmer discovers HOA trucks trespassing on his land, he doesn't call for help, he locks the gates. What starts as a property dispute spirals into sabotage, scandal, and a battle for truth that will shake the entire community. The clock is ticking. I woke up that morning like any other, planning to spend the first half of the day pruning the citrus trees and checking the irrigation system out by the west slope. Sonoma County mornings have this cool mist that wraps around the fields like a blanket, and I'd grown to love the way it sat on the grass before the sun had a chance to burn it off. Coffee in one hand, clipboard in the other, I stepped out onto my porch, not expecting to see anything but dew and early birds. Instead, I saw a line of trucks, 3 of them, crawling through the open utility gate on the east side of the property. White box trucks, big ones with Sunny Grove Hills HOA Community Supply Program, slapped across the sides in bold green lettering. My hand froze with the coffee cup halfway to my mouth. They didn't hesitate, didn't stop, didn't even honk. They just rolled right in, turned onto the dirt path between the orchard rows, and began parking, one after another, in the clearing near the fig trees. I watched in silence for a moment. I didn't panic. You don't run a ranch this long without learning how to suppress your initial urge to shoot first and ask questions later. But something about the way they moved, like they'd done this before, like they belonged there, that set my nerves on edge. My first thought was maybe they got lost or took a wrong turn. But that fantasy evaporated when I saw workers in HOA branded polo shirts hop out and start unloading pallets of produce. I set down my coffee, grabbed my phone, and made my way down to the clearing. "Morning," I said as I approached the first guy, young, probably no older than 20, hauling a box of sweet potatoes like he was stocking shelves at Costco. He barely looked up. "Morning, sir." "Need help?" I asked, real casual. "Nah, we're good. We've done this setup a few times already." "This setup?" "Yeah, the pop-up point for Sunny Grove. Miss Fleming said we'd be using this space today." He gestured vaguely around the orchard like it was some shared community center. "Miss Fleming," I repeated. "You mean Karen Fleming?" He nodded without missing a beat. "Yeah, the president." I stared at him for a long second, trying to make sure I'd heard right. Then I turned on my heel and walked back up to the house. Didn't say another word. I had no obligation to yell at a kid who was just following orders. I opened my laptop, pulled up the access control dashboard, and locked every gate on the property. The east gate, the one they had driven through, sealed with a metallic clunk. Then I activated perimeter lockdown mode. Anyone still on the inside? They'd be staying until we sorted this out. My phone was already ringing. Caller ID, Karen Fleming. I let it go to voicemail. Instead, I called up my property attorney, left him a message too, short and sweet. HOA just trespassed. Need confirmation. Enforcement of standing access clause. Charging rate applies. I knew the answer, but I wanted it in writing. Then I picked up the phone and called Karen back. She answered on the second ring. "Lincoln, hey, great to hear from you. You want to explain why there are 3 HOA trucks on my land right now." "Oh," she said, drawing the word out like it was a surprise birthday party. It's just a temporary arrangement. Our usual distribution site had a hiccup with permits, and we had to improvise. Your land is perfect, flat, accessible, and, well, frankly, underutilized. My land," I said slowly, "is not communal, Karen. It's private, commercially zoned, gated, and posted." I know," she said quickly, "but this is for the community. You're a part of us, aren't you? It's an emergency." "Emergency?" I scoffed. "You didn't even knock." "It was all very last minute. Come on, Lincoln. Do something good for the neighborhood." I took a breath and opened my contract template folder, clicked into the unauthorized use clause, copied the section, and pasted it into an email addressed to her. "I just sent you an invoice," I said calmly. "Starting from the moment your trucks breached my gate, the charge is $500 per hour per vehicle. That's $1,500 per hour. We're going into our second hour." "Excuse me," she snapped. "You heard me. That's extortion." "No," I said, still calm. "That's my standard operating rate for third-party usage of my land, per contract." "Which you would know, had you bothered to ask." She started to say something else, but I ended the call before she could get it out. The trucks weren't going anywhere, and neither was I. They wanted to play logistics? Fine, let's play. By the time the trucks had been parked on my land for 3 full hours, my phone had lit up with messages from numbers I didn't recognize. HOA board members, I assumed, trying to sound polite while strongly hinting that I should release the vehicles to avoid unnecessary complications. My reply was simple: happy to release them once payment is made in full. Clock's still running. I attached the updated invoice. I figured it wouldn't be long before someone escalated. Karen wasn't the type to take no lying down. Sure enough, not 15 minutes later, I heard the low rumble of engines near the front gate. I checked the monitor and saw 2 black and white patrol cars parked just outside, emergency lights rotating lazily in the November sun. I met them at the gate myself, unlocked it manually. Always better to look cooperative when law enforcement's involved. 2 officers stepped out, both mid-40s, both with the same exhausted expression of men who'd probably rather be anywhere else. "Good morning, gentlemen," I said, tipping my hat slightly. I assume this is about the trespassing situation. One of them, Officer Mendez, gave a small smile. "Mr. Rhodes?" "That's me." He gestured toward the property. "We've received a call from a Ms. Karen Fleming claiming you're unlawfully detaining vehicles belonging to her community organization." I almost laughed. "You mean the vehicles that unlawfully entered my land at dawn without permission and set up a commercial operation in my orchard?" Mendez looked at his partner, who was already thumbing through a tablet. "Would you be willing to show us your property documentation, sir?" "Absolutely. Come on in." I led them up the gravel path toward the house, where I had already laid out a folder on the porch table, complete with plat maps, zoning declarations, recorded deeds, and a laminated copy of my third-party access clause with my rates. For unauthorized use, I didn't just run a ranch. I ran a logistics hub on the side. My paperwork was sharper than a damn scalpel. As they reviewed the documents, Karen's shrill voice pierced the air. She stormed through the open gate behind the cops, heels clacking on the gravel like she was making an entrance in some HOA-themed opera. "This is outrageous," she snapped. "He's holding our trucks hostage." "This is extortion." Officer Mendez held up a hand without even turning around. "Ma'am, we're reviewing the property records." "They're community assets," she shrieked. "People are waiting for their deliveries." I glanced at the officers. "Would now be a good time to show you the security footage of the trucks entering without clearance?" Mendez nodded. "Yes, please." I led them inside, pulled up the time-stamped footage from my exterior cameras. There they were, trucks entering uninvited, workers unloading, no one asking a damn thing. Karen, by the way, never appeared on the footage herself. She'd sent the labor, not her face. Cowards move. The officers took notes. When we stepped back outside, the other officer, Miller, was already wrapping things up with dispatch over his radio. "Ms. Fleming," Mendez said, finally turning to her. "Mr. Rhodes has presented valid property ownership, and there is no indication that he granted permission for use of this land. According to California Penal Code 602, this situation qualifies as unauthorized entry and commercial use of private property." "You've got to be kidding," she muttered. "Ma'am," he continued, "he's not holding the trucks a hostage. He's enforcing his posted commercial terms. Your workers and vehicles entered without permission and set up what appears to be a retail distribution operation. He is well within his rights to charge fees for unauthorized use. If anything, you're fortunate he hasn't filed a criminal trespass complaint yet." I could see her trying to calculate whether calling the police had just detonated in her face. It had. "This is insane. It's my community," she barked, turning red. "He should be helping us." I folded my arms. "Karen, I am not part of your HOA. I don't pay dues. I don't get newsletters, and I sure as hell didn't sign up to be your warehouse." Mendez turned to me. "Would you like to press charges, sir?" "Not yet," I said, "but I'd like this incident documented as a formal report. Trespass, unauthorized commercial activity, and attempted coercion." Miller nodded. "We'll file it today. You'll get a copy." Karen stood there, visibly vibrating. She opened her mouth again, then shut it, turned on her heel, and stormed back to her SUV. I walked the officers back to the gate. Before they left, Mendez said, "I've seen a lot of HOA drama, Mr. Rhodes, but this one's going in the weird file." I chuckled. "Appreciate the backup. Hope it doesn't get weirder." He gave me a knowing look. "It always gets weirder." As they pulled away, I looked out over the orchard. The truck sat still, like stranded cattle boxed in behind electronic gates, racking up their hourly fees. Clock was still ticking. The next morning, I woke up to find my inbox flooded. Emails, social media mentions, tags from local Facebook groups, all carrying the same tone. Outrage, not at Karen, at me, some genius from the HOA. And by some genius, I obviously mean Karen, had posted an open letter to the community, complete with a picture of the parked trucks taken from behind my fence and a headline that read, "Farmer blockades community food. Distribution, families go hungry." The body of the post was pure propaganda. Claimed that due to my selfish refusal to cooperate with an emergency food access initiative, dozens of families were going without essential supplies. That I had imprisoned vehicles full of fresh produce and jeopardized the welfare of children and seniors. She even had the nerve to include an old photo of me at a local farmer's market, smiling in front of my stall as if to say, "Look, he pretends to serve the community, but here's his true face." My coffee went cold as I scrolled through the comments. Disgusting behavior. Hope the county fines him into the ground. Shouldn't be allowed to own land if you don't care about your neighbors. He's not one of us, never was. There were hundreds of them. I sat still for a long moment. Then I leaned back in my chair and let out a laugh. Low, bitter, and involuntary. She really thought this would work. Karen Fleming was playing the long game, trying to turn public opinion so thoroughly against me that I'd fold just to get peace back. Hell, it might have worked on someone else, but I had receipts. I spent the next 2 hours building my rebuttal like I was prepping for war. First, I edited together a video montage using footage from my security cameras. The trucks rolling in uninvited, the unloading, the workers casually strolling around like they owned the place. Overlaid GPS data pulled from the truck's own telematics, which I had access to thanks to their telematics pinging a nearby farm tower. Then I recorded a short piece to camera. No dramatics, just me in front of the orchard in boots and flannel. My name is Lincoln Rhodes. I'm the owner of this land. Not a part of any HOA, not beholden to their leadership. Yesterday, without notice or permission, 3 vehicles from the Sunny Grove Hills HOA illegally entered my property and set up commercial operations. They did not ask. They did not rent. They assumed. And they were wrong. I attached the legal documents, zoning maps, video proof, timestamps, everything, uploaded it to my ranch's official page, my personal account, and cross-posted it to every forum, Facebook group, and community app I could think of. I titled it simply, HOA Trespasses, Cries Foul When Caught. Then I waited. It took about an hour before the comments started shifting. Wait, so they just drove in without asking? Why are they using private land for this? Not cool, Karen. This doesn't look like an emergency. This guy has everything documented. She really thought he wouldn't clap back. A few hours later, the first whistleblower popped up in the comments under Karen's original post. Username, Sunny Citizen. They wrote, "This wasn't an emergency. The original site fell through weeks ago, and she refused to pay for a permit elsewhere. She said she'd find someone dumb enough not to fight back. Guess she miscalculated." The comment exploded. People started asking questions. More anonymous accounts started hinting that this wasn't the first time Karen had repurposed other people's assets for HOA initiatives. Then came the DMs. One was from a local bakery owner who said Karen had once tried to commandeer their delivery bay during a HOA arts and crafts pop-up. Another from a guy who used to manage HOA vendor contracts said he'd seen some shady stuff, hinted that someone in the logistics pipeline was related to Karen. By sunset, Karen's post had more laugh reacts than likes. The HOA issued a neutral-sounding statement. "We are looking into the details of a misunderstanding involving logistics and community access and hope to reach a resolution soon." Translation, we're panicking. I sat on my porch that night with a tumbler of bourbon and a long view of the idle trucks still boxed into my orchard. They weren't going anywhere. And now, neither was the truth. The clock kept ticking. It was around 2 in the morning when the alarm tripped. I was dead asleep, but my security system doesn't ask politely. It screams. The motion sensor near the compost pile caught something, and the high-frequency outdoor alarm kicked in immediately. I jolted awake, heart pounding like a war drum, and scrambled to the monitor in my office, bare feet cold against the floor. There, in grainy black and white, was a figure in a dark hoodie moving toward the compost heap. They were carrying something, small canister, maybe a bottle, and crouched low, pouring it around like it was gasoline. And then they lit it. The flame didn't roar. It sizzled. The top layer of dry mulch caught quickly, sending up thick, oily smoke into the cold night air. Whoever it was didn't stick around to admire their work. They bolted the second it flared, but not fast enough. My front driveway cam caught them at just the right angle. It was Karen, hood down, ponytail swinging, unmistakable walk like she was storming out of a PTA meeting. I hit the fire suppression system manually and sprinted out the back door with an extinguisher. By the time I got there, the smoke was thick, but the fire hadn't spread. It was more of a statement than an actual arson attempt, a message, not a torch job. I put it out in under 5 minutes, but the smell, lingering, sharp, chemical, obvious. I didn't even need to think. I called it in. By 4 a.m., a deputy from the county sheriff's office was on my property, flashlight sweeping across the charred compost, asking polite but increasingly concerned questions. I showed him the footage. He watched it twice. No commentary, just a slow shake of the head. She really thought this wouldn't leave a trail. She thought I wouldn't press, I said. We'll file this under attempted vandalism, he told me, and possibly illegal dumping of hazardous material. We'll start a report. That would have been enough for one night, but Karen wasn't done. At 9:15 a.m. sharp, a fire inspector showed up, unannounced. Claimed he'd received an anonymous tip about improper storage of flammable materials near residential zones. Said someone had submitted photographs showing open burning activity. Seriously, I asked, already pulling out my phone. You want to see what was really burning? 10 minutes later, I was showing him the same footage. He nodded, took some notes, and left in a hurry. Didn't even ask for coffee. By noon, I had a notice of violation hanging on my gate from the local health department. This one accused me of improper composting practices and excessive odor generation. It was so absurd, I almost framed it. I spent the next 3 hours submitting rebuttal documents with time-stamped video, soil sample logs, and my full inspection history, all spotless. The inspector from the county office, who'd visited me back in July, even sent me an informal message. Looks like someone's trying to weaponize code enforcement. Don't worry, we've seen this game before. But I was tired of defense, so I went on offense. That evening, I got another message from Sunny Citizen. This time, it was a zip file. Inside, internal HOA emails, drafted by Karen. Some were frantic, her complaining that the trucks were still trapped, blaming her logistics team. Others were more damning. One showed her writing, "I told you roads would cave. We've used his land before, and he never raised a stink. He's bluffing." Another, "If he wants to charge us, fine. I'll flood him with inspections. We'll find a violation. Everyone has something." And the best of all was a screenshot of her forwarding a permit rejection email to her assistant with the words, "Whatever, just send the trucks to Lincoln." It's not like he uses that orchard for anything useful. My jaw clenched. My orchard wasn't just useful, it was sacred. My late wife had planted those fig trees. That land meant something. That night, bourbon in hand, I added all the documents to my evidence folder. I backed everything up twice. Karen had officially crossed the line. She thought she could scorch the earth to cover her tracks, but the cameras didn't lie. And I wasn't done counting. The clock was still ticking. By the next morning, I was officially in siege mode. The orchard was still locked down, the trucks still parked like props in some absurd HOA-themed performance art piece, and my inbox had turned into a war room. Between legal updates from my attorney, messages from other local business owners suddenly eager to share their horror stories about Karen, and an ever-growing stream of community gossip, I barely had time to finish my breakfast. Then I got the message that changed everything. It was from a private email, no name, just a burner Gmail address and the subject line. "I want her gone. Let's talk." The message was short. "You don't know me yet, but I know Karen. I've been on the HOA board for 5 years. I've seen the rot from the inside. I have documents, votes, private memos. She's been threatening the board, bullying dissent, and funneling contracts to her family. I can prove it. But I won't go public until I know you're serious. Meet me. Discretion required." He signed it only with a name, David C. I sat back in my chair and exhaled slowly. David C. The name rang a bell. He was one of the quieter HOA board members. Didn't say much during the few community forums I'd tuned into, which usually featured Karen holding court like a suburban tyrant. I remembered he used to work in military intelligence, had 2 kids, and kept mostly to himself. Apparently, he'd had enough. I agreed to meet him at a quiet diner off Route 12, the kind of place where truckers outnumber tourists and nobody asks questions. He showed up in a ball cap and windbreaker, sat down across from me like we were old war buddies. "Thanks for coming," he said. "You were the one feeding me those emails." He nodded once. "Sunny citizen," I chuckled. "You were bold." I was careful. Karen has eyes everywhere. She's used the HOA like a private army for years. She controls the vote, the committees, the money, and now she's getting reckless, sending trucks onto your land without permission. That was desperate. "And the fire?" I asked. His jaw tightened. "I heard. I didn't think she'd go that far." "She's spiraling," I said. "She's cornered," he corrected, "and she knows it." Then he handed me a flash drive and a folder. Real paper, stapled and highlighted. Inside, a full vote log showing how Karen overrode protocol to authorize the supply drop site switch. She never notified the full board. She forged a vote count. Multiple internal messages showed her threatening to remove members who opposed her. One email was just a screenshot of a zoning rejection with the words, "I'm done waiting for permission. We'll use roads. If he fights back, we crush him." And then the kicker, a contract between the HOA and a logistics firm called Green Path Freight, signed by Karen herself, registered to a P.O. box in Nebraska. Her nephew, David said. "Hey, he doesn't even live in California. It's a shell. She's been skimming off supply runs for over a year." "Why now?" I asked. "Why bring this to me?" "Because you did what the rest of us were too afraid to do. Say no. Publicly. With teeth. You've got momentum, and I'm sick of serving under a tyrant who acts like she's queen of cul-de-sacs." I sat with that for a minute. "You want her out?" I asked. "I want her finished," he said. "But we do it clean, legal, transparent. We call a board vote. I've got the numbers, barely, but with your evidence and the public backlash, she won't survive it." He paused, then added, "But I'm not going public until I know you're not going to let this fade." I looked him in the eye. "She tried to burn my land and slandered me in front of the whole damn county. I'm not going anywhere." David nodded once and stood up. "Then we're aligned." We parted without a handshake. Too risky. That evening, I forwarded the entire packet to my lawyer. Told him to prepare an amended civil complaint, now with claims of fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit unlawful entry. I also shared everything with a journalist I knew at the Sonoma Press-Gazette, off the record, for now. I wanted her primed. When this went public, it was going to explode. And the best part? The trucks were still trapped. Every hour the bill climbed, clocks still ticking. Courtrooms are strange places, sterile beige, humming with quiet tension. On the outside, they look like any other government building, but inside, they're arenas. And on that morning, I walked into mine with a full arsenal. The case was officially titled Rhodes vs. Sunny Grove Hills HOA et al. My attorney called it a straightforward property rights dispute, but we both knew it was a powder keg wrapped in a legal proceeding. Karen arrived late, of course. Clicked in through the back doors like she was making a grand entrance, flanked by two attorneys in charcoal suits and that smug expression she'd patented over the years. The one that said, "This is beneath me, but I'm here anyway." She didn't look at me as she passed. Probably couldn't. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s. Sharp, no nonsense. She glanced through the case file like she was speed reading a menu, then looked up and said, "Let's begin." My lawyer opened with the basics. Clear property lines, confirmed zoning, no shared community agreements, and proof that I was not and had never been under the jurisdiction of Sunny Grove Hills HOA. Then came the evidence. We showed footage of the trucks rolling through my gates without permission, time-stamped, high resolution, no audio needed. We presented GPS records verifying the exact paths the trucks took to reach my land. Pulled from public fleet records. Then we dropped the real hammer, the footage of Karen, hooded and alone, setting fire to my compost pile like a low-budget eco-terrorist. The courtroom went quiet when that clip played. You could have heard a fly land on the bench. Karen's lawyer objected, irrelevant to the civil matter, but the judge allowed it, noting that it demonstrated potential motive, pattern of retaliation, and character conduct. Karen didn't blink, but her jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. Then came the emails, the ones David had handed me. My attorney narrated them like a prosecutor reading confessions. Her admission that she used my land without permission, the threats to board members, the plan to crush opposition, the logistics contracts awarded to her out-of-state nephews, company, shell game, fraud, coercion. We laid it all bare. Karen's lawyers tried to pivot, claim it was all a misunderstanding, that she'd been forced into quick decisions due to logistical constraints. But the judge wasn't buying it. She interrupted one of their longer monologues with, "Your client committed multiple violations of property law, lied to her own board, and retaliated with malicious intent. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is a pattern." Then came the moment no one was prepared for. Just before closing arguments, the court clerk passed a note to the judge. She read it, blinked, and said, "It appears the HOA has submitted a last-minute change in leadership certification." Karen turned toward the back of the courtroom like someone had just stabbed her. I turned too and saw David Costa standing near the door, dressed in a gray suit, calm, collected, holding a briefcase. Behind him, 2 other board members stood, the quiet ones, the ones Karen thought she had silenced. The judge asked, "Mr. Costa, you've been elected interim president of the Sunny Grove Hills HOA." He nodded. "Yes, Your Honor, by board vote this morning. The previous president was removed for cause, effective immediately." Karen's mouth opened. Nothing came out. David handed the judge a certified statement, notarized and stamped. The judge glanced through it, nodded, and said, "Then this court recognizes the change. Mr. Costa, are you here in an official capacity?" "I am," he said, "and I'd like to confirm that we are withdrawing any claims of right to Mr. Rhodes's land. Furthermore, we acknowledge our organization's trespass and misuse of property, and we intend to comply fully with the court's ruling." It was over. Karen looked like she'd been gutted with a plastic knife. Her attorneys tried to salvage dignity, but there was none left to preserve. The judge ruled in my favor. Full damages, $85,000 payable by the HOA. Mandatory removal of all vehicles and materials from my property within 48 hours. A court-ordered audit of the HOA's financial activity for the past 5 years. And, for the final nail, a written public apology from the board, to be published in every local outlet that had carried Karen's original smear campaign. I didn't smile. Not in the courtroom, but inside. Something settled. Not relief. Not yet. But something close to justice. As I walked out, David caught up to me. "I meant it," he said. "You didn't just stop her. You gave us the excuse we needed." I shook his hand. "You did the hard part," I said. "You stood up when it mattered." He nodded. "Now we clean up the mess." The trucks were gone within the next day, but I wasn't done just yet. Clock stopped. Balance pending. For a few days after the court ruling, things were almost eerily quiet. The trucks vanished from my orchard like they'd never been there. The grass still scarred where their tires had sunk into soft soil, but otherwise it was as if the whole mess had evaporated. No more HOA messages, no Karen sightings, no angry neighbors protesting at my gates. But silence like that never lasts. It started with a knock on my office door, not the house, not the porch, but the actual barn-style building I used to manage the storage and shipping side of the ranch. Only people with serious business come there. I opened it to find a county investigator and a representative from the state attorney's office. Not agents, not suits, just tired civil servants who clearly knew they were sitting on something radioactive. "We're conducting a preliminary inquiry into financial irregularities involving Sunny Grove Hills HOA," one of them said. "We understand you may have relevant evidence." I handed them the drive. Emails, contract copies, GPS logs, and the original statement from David about the fraudulent logistics contracts, all wrapped up with a bow. They thanked me. Didn't say much else. But I recognized the look. It was the same one the officers wore when they first arrived on my land. This is going to get ugly. The very next day, the Sonoma Press-Gazette published the headline, "HOA President Under Criminal Investigation After Fraud Claims and Arson Attempt." The article didn't hold back. It detailed the fire incident. It explained the illegal use of my land. It named her nephew's shell company and included quotes from anonymous board members about her iron-fisted tactics and misuse of authority. It even mentioned that she had allegedly forged internal votes, a crime that, under California HOA statutes, could be prosecuted as fraudulent governance conduct. Karen's photo, taken during one of her smug HOA pressers from last year, was now plastered above a subheadline that read, "The Queen of Cul-de-sacs may be headed for court." The fallout was swift. Residents began showing up at board meetings, livid. Videos surfaced online of them yelling, holding signs that said, "We are not your kingdom," and "Where's our money, Karen?" David, bless him, kept his cool. He promised transparency, opened up the books, brought in a third-party auditor, and started issuing refunds to members who'd been overcharged under Karen's various community initiatives. But Karen herself? She disappeared, vanished from public life entirely until she was arrested. 3 weeks after the ruling, Karen Fleming was taken into custody on charges of HOA fund misappropriation, fraudulently awarding contracts to a family-owned company, obstruction of internal board procedures, and attempted destruction of property. Bail was posted, but the damage was done. She lost her home in the neighborhood she once ruled. Her nephew's company was delisted from the HOA's vendor registry. Her name was scrubbed from every Sunnygrove page like it had never existed. I didn't gloat, not publicly, but when I passed the now quiet HOA office during a supply run to town, I did tip my hat to the empty parking lot. It felt earned. A few days later, David came by the ranch with a bottle of wine. Not cheap stuff either. We sat under the pergola near the fig trees, where this whole mess had started. "We're rebuilding," he said. "Boards being restructured. We're putting in transparency bylaws. No more unchecked presidents. Ever." "Good," I said. "Maybe it'll become something people can actually trust." "We couldn't have done it without you." I shook my head. "You would have found a way. I just gave you a match." He smiled. "No, Karen gave us the fire. You gave us the burn notice." As the sun set over the hills, I finally let the tension out of my shoulders. The orchard was mine again. Quiet, whole. No trucks, no trespassers. No HOA empires bleeding through the fence line. Just soil, trees, and silence. But I wasn't done yet. One more move to make. A month later, everything was green again. The grass where the trucks had rutted through finally took hold, thanks to aggressive reseeding, warm weather, and a stubborn refusal to let Karen's mess leave scars. The fig trees were back to stretching properly under the winter sun, and the irrigation lines hummed like a sleeping giant just under the dirt. Peace didn't come all at once. It settled in slowly, like fog rolling down the hill at dawn. And I made one final change. It was a metal sign, custom forged, painted matte black with raised white lettering. I bolted it to the gatepost by the east access road, the same gate the HOA trucks had invaded through that morning when this all began. It read, "Private property not affiliated with any HOA. Trespassing includes vehicles. Unauthorized parking will be invoiced immediately." Below that, "Clock starts when you enter." It wasn't just a warning. It was a damn line in the sand. But that wasn't the only shift. Inspired by the chaos, and maybe out of a small, stubborn sense of spite, I expanded the ranch's operations. I opened a public-facing farm stand on Saturdays and Sundays, not under any HOA regulation, not tied to Sunnygrove, just clean produce, handmade goods, local vendors. Word spread fast. The first weekend, we had maybe 50 people. The second, it was 200. By the end of the month, there were rows of parked cars along the edge of the property, and I had to set up extra shade tents near the orchard. No politics, no boards. Just neighbors trading cash and conversation for food that wasn't shipped through some shadowy nephew-run logistics company. I never once mentioned Karen. I didn't need to. She'd become a ghost in the community, a cautionary tale that slipped through the hedges when people gossiped at backyard barbecues. The HOA, under David's hand, was recovering. New rules, new audits, a lot more apologies than announcements these days. But as for me, I finally got back to farming. Not just land, but peace. I fixed up the old grape press near the barn, planted an extra row of mandarins by the southern fence, rebuilt the little pond the trucks had splashed mud through. Nothing dramatic, just acts of quiet reclamation. And every once in a while, someone would stop by the stand and ask, "Hey, weren't you the guy who—" I'd smile. "Nope," I'd say, "I'm just the guy who grows figs." But when I walked past that gate, the east gate, the one with the scars, I always slowed down and looked at the camera, because the truth is, you never know what's coming through it next. But you can be damn sure it knows what it's walking into.